There exists a truth so disorienting that your mind will perform acrobatics to avoid it. Let me tell you what I've come to understand. After years of sitting with the unbearable, you are not here by accident. The body you inhabit, the family that shaped you, the traumas that broke you open like a seed needing light, none of it was random. Before you took your first breath in this world, you were standing somewhere else entirely, looking down at the curriculum of a lifetime, and you said, yes. You chose this, every ounce of it. I know how that sounds. The ego recoils immediately, doesn't it? Because if you're reading this and you've suffered, if you've been betrayed or abandoned or hurt in ways that still wake you at 3 in the morning, the idea that you selected these experiences feels like cosmic gaslighting. But stay with me here. What if I told you that conception isn't a biological lottery? That the moment your consciousness merged with matter wasn't random collision but orchestrated precision? The prevailing story we tell ourselves is that sperm met egg, cells divided, and here we are, accidents wrapped in skin, making the best of arbitrary circumstances. I've learned to see that story for what it is, a comfortable lie that protects us from a much more demanding reality. You came here as cosmic intelligence, wearing a costume of limitation, the same force that spins galaxies into existence and orchestrates the trillion synapses firing in your brain right now. That's what you actually are, not the limited version that worries about bills and relationships and whether you said the right thing at dinner last night. That's the character you're playing, but it's not the author of the script. Before you forgot, before the veil came down, you were that author. You looked at the catalog of possible human experiences, and you selected the exact combination that would crack you open in precisely the right way. Your family wasn't assigned to you. People often stumble over this one because it cuts so close to the bone. You chose your parents, not because they were perfect or even good, but because their particular blend of dysfunction and unconsciousness would trigger exactly what needed to be triggered in you. That father who couldn't show affection, that mother who projected her unlived life onto yours, that sibling who occupied the space you needed. They're not villains in your story. They're teachers you specifically hired before the curriculum began. You knew on some level that transcends knowing, that their limitations would become the sandpaper that shaped you. Their wounds would press against yours until something in you had no choice but to transform or break. Think about the precision of it. You didn't just pick any parents. You selected the ones whose specific traumas and coping mechanisms would create the exact emotional laboratory necessary for your evolution. That's not cruelty. That's the opposite of randomness. Every time they disappointed you, every moment they failed to see you, every way they repeated their own parents' mistakes, that was the curriculum unfolding exactly as designed. The ego experiences this as happening to you, but there's another way to see it. You orchestrated it for yourself with surgical accuracy. And your body. Let's talk about the meat suit you're wearing, because this one bothers people almost as much as the family question. You think you drew the short straw with your genetics, your appearance, your health challenges, your gender, the way you move through the world in this particular form. But what if those weren't cards dealt by a blind dealer? What if you sat in some pre-incarnate strategy session and said, yes, give me that chronic illness, because I need to learn surrender. Give me that face, because I need to discover worth beyond beauty. Give me that disability, because I need to access compassion that only comes through limitation. The body isn't a prison. It's a precisely calibrated teaching device. Every limitation is a door. Every challenge is an invitation to grow in a direction you couldn't access through ease. I've watched people wrestle with their bodies their entire lives, hating what they see in the mirror, wishing they'd been born different. And underneath that hatred is the assumption that it's all arbitrary, that they lost some cosmic coin flip. But strip that assumption away and something else emerges. If you chose this body, then it's not a mistake. It's not punishment. It's a curriculum made flesh. The parts of yourself you've spent decades rejecting might be the very parts you selected, because you knew they'd force you to develop qualities that don't arise through comfort. You wanted to learn them so badly that you designed physical circumstances that would make learning them inevitable. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable, and I need you to breathe through this next part, because it's the piece that transforms everything or destroys the whole framework depending on how you hold it. The suffering, the trauma, the heartbreak that felt like it would kill you, the betrayals, the losses, the moments when life gutted you so completely you didn't think you'd survive. You chose those too. Not because you're a masochist or because the universe is cruel, but because those specific experiences with pharmaceutical precision would crack the shell of your ego in exactly the way it needed to crack. There's a violence to real spiritual growth that no one wants to talk about. It's not all meditation cushions and inner peace. Sometimes awakening requires being broken so thoroughly that the person you thought you were can't be reassembled. And you knew this. Before you came here, you understood that some lessons only come through fire, that certain kinds of wisdom are forged exclusively in the crucible of pain. So you selected traumas the way a surgeon selects instruments. This one will reveal your strength. That one will force you to ask for help. This betrayal will teach you discernment. That loss will open your heart in ways that safety never could. I'm not saying your pain wasn't real or that it didn't matter. I'm saying it mattered so much that you specifically chose it as your teacher. Every person who hurt you was playing a role you cast them in before either of you remembered you were acting. The narcissist who destroyed your boundaries, the lover who abandoned you, the friend who betrayed your trust. They're not accidents. They're precisely placed catalysts in a curriculum you designed when you still remembered why you came here. But here's the cruel gift embedded in this design. You had to forget that you chose it. This is what they call cosmic amnesia, and it's not a bug in the system, it's the feature that makes the whole thing work. If you arrived here remembering that you selected this life, that you orchestrated every challenge, the lessons wouldn't land. You'd be like an actor who keeps winking at the camera, never fully inhabiting the role. The forgetting is what makes it real. You chose to forget that you chose so that when the pain came, it would be genuine enough to actually transform you. The veil of amnesia is what turns cosmic theater into authentic experience. People ask me how this is fair, how a loving universe could design a system where you're set up to suffer without even knowing you agreed to it. But fairness is an ego concept. The universe isn't trying to be fair. It's trying to help you remember what you are, and sometimes forgetting what you are is the only way to truly find yourself. You can't discover your strength until you face circumstances that require it. You can't develop compassion until you know suffering. You can't access your true power until you've exhausted every false source of power and come up empty. The amnesia isn't punishment. It's the necessary condition for authentic learning. And you left yourself breadcrumbs. This is the part that gives me chills every time I notice it. Even though you forgot the plan, you built in reminders. They show up as intuitions that arrive from nowhere, as synchronicities so precise they can't be coincidence, as moments when you just know something without knowing how you know it. These are traces of your pre-incarnation awareness breaking through the veil, that gut feeling that saved you, that impossible timing that brought exactly the right person into your life, exactly when you needed them, that dream that showed you something you couldn't have known. Those are whispers from the version of you that designed this curriculum. You're leaving messages for yourself across the boundary of forgetting. Think about the moments when you felt something bigger moving through your life. Not the major events, but those small instances of impossible alignment where everything clicked into place in a way that reason can't explain. The book that fell off the shelf and opened to the exact page you needed to read. The stranger who said the thing you'd been trying to articulate for months. The crisis that arrived precisely when you'd gotten too comfortable and stopped growing. People call these coincidences, but that word is just a way to domesticate mystery. These aren't accidents. They're your own higher intelligence reaching across the veil to remind you, you're not lost. You're exactly where you plan to be. Now, approximately here in the middle of this journey we're taking together, I want to pause and ask something of you. If this resonates, if something in you is recognizing a truth you'd forgotten, I'd love for you to join this conversation more permanently by subscribing to this channel. But more than that, I want you to do something right now that connects you to this material in a deeper way. Take a moment and think about one experience in your life that felt random or cruel or unfair. Just one. Hold it in your mind. And then ask yourself this question. If I had chosen this before I arrived, what would I have been trying to teach myself? Write your answer in the comments. Not for me, but for you. Because articulating that question begins to shift your relationship to everything that's happened to you. It transforms you from victim to author, from someone life happened to, into someone who orchestrated their own curriculum. Take a moment with that. I'll wait. The resistance to this idea isn't accidental either. Your ego fights this framework with everything it has, because accepting it means accepting something terrifying. You're fully responsible. Not in the guilt-ridden, self-blaming way that keeps you small, but in the cosmically responsible way that restores your power. If you chose this life, if you selected every major player and plot twist, then you're not a victim of circumstance. You're the author who forgot they wrote the story. And authors can write new chapters. This is the paradigm shift that changes everything. Most people spend their lives reacting to circumstances, feeling buffeted by forces beyond their control, asking why these things keep happening to them. But underneath that victim stance is an unexamined assumption that life is something that happens to you rather than something you're actively creating from a level of consciousness you can't usually access. What if both are true? What if you're simultaneously the character experiencing the story and the author writing it? The part of you reading these words is the character. The part that chose this body, this family, this sequence of lessons. That's the author. And the author is still here, still active, still orchestrating your life, even when the character feels powerless. They tell you that you're cosmic intelligence pretending to be limited, and your mind immediately tries to understand that as a concept. But it's not a concept. It's the literal truth of what you are. The same awareness that grows your hair and digests your food and heals your cuts without you thinking about it. The same intelligence that keeps your heart beating and coordinates the billions of cellular processes happening in you right this second. That's not different from you. That is you. The real you. The one that existed before this body and will exist after it. And that intelligence is so vast, so incomprehensibly complex, that it can't be contained in the small self you usually identify with. So you chunk it down. You forget how big you are, so you can experience what it's like to be small. But you're not actually small. You've never been small. You're infinity pretending to be finite, omniscience playing at ignorance, unlimited consciousness wearing a costume called limitation. And the whole point of the costume is to see what happens when you forget you're wearing it. That's where the growth is. That's where the real discovery happens. Not in knowing your power, but in forgetting it completely, and then remembering it again through lived experience. Every challenge you face is an opportunity for that remembering. Every moment you feel powerless is an invitation to discover that you're not. People experience this realization in different ways. Some have a sudden awakening where the veil lifts and they see the design all at once. They look back at their life, and every piece clicks into place like a completed puzzle. And they understand that nothing was wasted, nothing was random, everything was exactly as it needed to be. Others come to it gradually, through years of working with their pain, until they notice patterns, until they start to see the curriculum underneath the chaos. There's no right way to wake up to this, But once you do, once you even entertain the possibility that you're the author of your own story, something shifts. The struggles don't disappear, but they stop being tragedies. They become curriculum, and curriculum has a purpose. This is where sovereignty begins. Not the false sovereignty of the ego that thinks it controls everything through force of will, but the deeper sovereignty of recognizing that you're the one who designed the maze you're trying to navigate. You're not lost in someone else's game. You're playing the game you created for yourself. And the moment you recognize that, the moment you shift from, "Why is this happening to me?" to, "What was I trying to teach myself?" you reclaim the authorship you never actually lost. You stop reacting and start creating consciously. You stop being a victim of your circumstances and start being the architect of your own transformation. I know this isn't easy to sit with. Some of you are reading this and feeling anger because it sounds like I'm saying your trauma was your fault. That's not what I'm saying. Fault is an ego concept that keeps you locked in judgment. I'm talking about authorship, which is different. An author isn't at fault for what happens to their characters. They're responsible for creating the conditions in which their characters can grow. You're not to blame for what happened to you, but you might be the one who, from a higher vantage point, said yes to those experiences because you knew they'd crack you open in ways that nothing else could. And here's the paradox that makes this whole framework work. You can hold both truths simultaneously. The character's pain is real and valid and deserves to be honored. And the author chose that pain with intention and precision. Both are true. The suffering happened, and it mattered. And it was also exactly what needed to happen for you to become who you're becoming. This isn't about dismissing your pain or spiritually bypassing your trauma. It's about expanding your perspective wide enough to hold your suffering as sacred curriculum rather than meaningless chaos. There are implications to this that ripple out in every direction once you really let it in. If you chose your parents, you can stop blaming them and start thanking them for playing their role so perfectly. If you chose your body, you can stop warring with it and start working with the lessons it's trying to teach you. If you chose your traumas, you can stop identifying as a victim and start recognizing yourself as an incredibly brave soul who took on significant challenges because you knew you were strong enough to transform them. Nothing about your life has been wasted. Nothing about you is a mistake. Every single piece of your experience has been exactly what you needed, selected by the version of you that remembers why you came. So here's what this means for you moving forward. You get to choose how you hold this information. You can reject it entirely, and that's fine. Maybe you're not ready for it yet, and that's part of your curriculum too. Or you can let it shift something fundamental in how you relate to your life. When the next crisis comes, when the next heartbreak arrives, when the next impossible challenge appears on your doorstep, you have a new question available to you. What am I trying to teach myself through this? That question transforms everything. It doesn't make the pain go away, but it gives it purpose. It turns random suffering into sacred curriculum. It restores your power even when circumstances feel powerless. The truth is, you're not reading these words by accident. Nothing about this moment is random. Some part of you that still remembers the plan drew you here because you were ready to consider this possibility. You've been leaving breadcrumbs for yourself your whole life, and this is one of them. This is your own higher intelligence reaching across the veil of forgetting to remind you, you're not a victim. You're not lost. You're not broken. You're exactly where you designed yourself to be, learning exactly what you came here to learn. And the moment you recognize that, everything changes. You stop asking why this is happening to you and start asking what you're supposed to learn from it. You stop seeing yourself as the effect of causes beyond your control and start recognizing yourself as the cause creating effects you can't always consciously track. You stop identifying as the character being written and start remembering you're also the author holding the pen. Not metaphorically. Actually, The same intelligence writing your story is the intelligence reading these words right now. They're not separate. They never were. You just forgot for a while because forgetting was part of the design. And now you're starting to remember. Not all at once, because that would be overwhelming and the curriculum isn't finished. But piece by piece, moment by moment, challenge by challenge, you're waking up to the truth of what you are. Cosmic consciousness temporarily pretending to be limited, so you can experience the full spectrum of what existence offers. Your infinity exploring finitude. You're the universe looking at itself through the keyhole of your particular life, discovering what it's like to be exactly you, with exactly these challenges and exactly these lessons. As we come to the end of this exploration together, I want to invite you into something. If this has shifted your perspective even slightly, if it's opened a door you didn't know was there, I'd love for you to become part of this ongoing conversation by subscribing. But beyond that, I want to know how this landed for you. What in your life looks different when you consider that you might have chosen it? What becomes possible when you shift from victim to author? Share your story in the comments, not because I need to hear it, but because your story might be exactly what someone else needs to read to recognize their own truth. We're all leaving breadcrumbs for each other. Your words might be someone else's reminder that they're not as lost as they think. You came here to remember something you forgot. Maybe this is part of that remembering. Maybe this is one of the moments you specifically designed for yourself when you were planning this life from the other side of the veil. Trust that. Trust yourself. You've always known more than you remember knowing, and every challenge you've faced has been exactly what you needed, selected by the wisest version of yourself, designed with precision and love to crack you open to the truth of what you actually are. You're not here by accident. You never were.